You're watching the Team Nerd Tech Show with your hosts, Tim Gillen and Ruthy Kierlin.
Well, hello, nerds. Tim Gillen here, Terrapin Networks, Traverse City, Michigan. Thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Team Nerd Tech Show. We're in our week 5 or thereabouts of the coronavirus editions of the Team Nerd Tech Show. With me this week, as every week, is our co-host from, well, the state of New York, not in Queens right now because she's off quarantining in a little bit different part of New York, but my co-host, Ruthy Kerwin, and my daughter. Hi, Ruthy. How are you? How you feeling?
Hello, Tim. I am feeling 100%. Thank you very much. Got over the Rona, as us cool kids are calling it, a couple weeks ago. And feeling much better and just waiting out the lockdown at this point. Yeah,
well, this is episode 60 that we're in here of the Team Nerd Tech Show. And a couple episodes back, we had a special interview with Ruthy where she got full-on COVID-19. The breathing problems, the whole bit, stayed out of the hospital, went through a regimen of hydroxychloroquine and the Z-Pack and zinc and vitamin C and all that stuff, but she tells her story. I think it's episode 58, if I'm not mistaken, but it's out there on the teamnerdtechshow.com. And we encourage you to listen to it if you're curious to see how what it feels like to get COVID-19 and how she got through it. Today, we have a special guest, and I'll turn it over to Ruthy to do some intros.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. We have today with us Rex Rudolph from Padgett Business Services. Say hello, Rex.
Hello, Ruthy.
How are you today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm doing well.
Good. Now, I was wondering if you could, just real quick, kind of give us an overview of what Padgett Business Services does.
Sure. We are a accounting and tax provider primarily to small businesses and individuals, and we work with a lot of different industries in the northern Michigan area.
Okay.
Rex, how long have you had Padgett Business Services then? How long have you been around doing this?
Padgett is here in Traverse City. We're in our 10th year. The Padgett is actually a franchise throughout the United States and Canada, and we're one of approximately 250 franchisees throughout the U.S.
Okay. Oh my. Okay.
How large is your staff?
We have 9 people on staff, 1 administrative, and the rest are involved in tax, accounting services.
So some CPAs, some bookkeepers, some accountants, and you handle all sorts of. I'm asking these questions if I don't know, and as a disclaimer to everyone, I do know, because Rex and I are old friends, and Rex does our accounting, so I know exactly what he does. And Padgett is a customer of Terrapin Network, so full disclaimer. And actually, Rex is a fellow Team Nerd. A lot of you have asked us over the years where the Team Nerd comes from. And it kind of came from the fact that back in about 2007, I got involved in high school football, kind of from a coaching standpoint, but primarily from technology assistance and stats, helping with filming and the technology for the filming, as well as doing stats at games. So it kind of became a Team Nerd, and it started out at Glen Lake, which is west of Traverse City, again, about 2007. And then I think in the season of 2015, if I'm not mistaken, Rex, we took over doing the stats and helping out with technology for Traverse City Central, the Traverse City Central Trojans here in Traverse City, Michigan. And Rex and I are the Team Nerd team. We do stats. Rex is the spotter, and I'm the nerd hunched over a laptop at the football games. And so Rex is actually part of the Team Nerd team, which kind of, I guess, overdoes it. But that's for a kind of a full disclosure. So, but it did make a lot of sense for us to talk to Rex about some of this, because what he's experiencing with his accounting firm is really common to what I've seen a lot of companies have to go through, especially companies who deal with other companies. All right, that business to business kind of an idea.
And when you say that, what they're dealing with, you mean just the whole process of moving an in-house to working from home, to working remotely during this current lockdown? correct?
Yes. Well, Rex, maybe you can answer that. So the staff of 8 or 9 of yours is primarily working from home now, are they not?
That is correct. When the lockdown started, we had been in a position where we could work from home, but on a somewhat limited basis. It was more of a convenience factor than anything else at the time. But when the lockdown started, we had to move pretty much everybody into a work-at-home situation. Myself, I actually come into the office in order to support everybody because we weren't really set up to be completely and totally able to do that, and we still needed some functionality from our office. We needed kind of a central location to be able to handle things. So it's been a change for us, even though we were kind of dabbling in it, so to speak. But in order to do it on a full-time basis, there's a lot more there, and we're not as efficient as we should be and could be. And as Tim, you and I have talked, once we get through this time period, and hopefully this summer, we're going to take a real hard look at improving a lot of our processes and procedures, including some of the technology, along with how we interact with it.
I think that'll be a pretty common outcome for most companies. Rex, do you think so too? You've been talking to so many business owners. Do you think that a lot of people are thinking, okay, this was a kind of a forced dry run here? We've seen where part of it works and we've seen where part of it doesn't. Is that kind of what you've sensed from your clients as well?
Yeah, yes, it is. One of the things that we've run into some challenges with is infrastructure. So a lot of people have internet at home, but they don't necessarily have the bandwidth that they need. Right. Now that they've got people, kids at home trying to do online work, they're trying to work online, their neighbors are working online, and so we've had some challenges with bandwidth that we've noticed both internally and also in talking with some of our clients. So I think it's those types of things that are going to have to be addressed. One of the things, Tim, that you and I did was we relatively immediately doubled our bandwidth here at the office. Right. And we're actually looking at going beyond that as we need to. So there's a lot of those types of things that need to be looked at, and there's a number of other ones that I'm sure we'll talk about too as we go on here. Yeah.
Well, even when a lot of your functions are done from software that's hosted, meaning in the cloud, it still requires a certain amount of bandwidth, even to work from home. And now some people, we're up in the northwest part of the lower peninsula of Michigan, 50,000 people, something like that, less than 200,000. A lot of people in some of our outlying counties for our neck of the woods don't have much in the way of bandwidth, even for options. Have you found your staff a lot of customers that I've worked with, we've tried to set up their staff to be able to work from home, and some of them, man, it's really difficult because they just don't have, and it's not because they didn't want to pay for it. They don't only have so much in the way of availability for bandwidth. Have you found that with any of your staff?
Yes, I've got a staff person actually out in Leelanau County, and I've talked with him a number of times and asked how he's doing, and he just kind of chuckles a little bit and says he's getting by. But I know that the biggest challenge he has is he doesn't have a real strong internet connection. He doesn't have a lot of bandwidth, and it is impacting his ability to work in terms of his efficiency and how long it takes him to do various things. Right. So we're going to have to address that, and I suggest to him he needed to move into Traverse City, but we will have to come up with some options on how we can deal with that going forward.
Yeah, that is that struggle when not everybody can work from home, but the order is you got to start working from home. What are the kind of workarounds that you can do? So Tim, if you don't have that bandwidth, what options do people have really?
Well, bluntly, you don't. Oh, if you need to work from a place remotely that requires bandwidth and you don't have the bandwidth, you can't work from that place remotely. There's really no way around that. Yeah. You are the slowest. The way the internet works keep in mind, it's a big, and with the whole idea of the World Wide Web is because that's what the internet comes from, is a web. And it's in some ways kind of like the freeway and the highway system. You might get a text message from a friend or see on Facebook that there's a rollover accident on a particular highway, and they've closed it for the next couple hours, and so you route around it on your way home, which is what the internet does. And it finds what it thinks at the moment is the fastest way from point A to point B. But the slowest part of that is what controls your internet speed. So when you've got, this is why, for example, cable connections work good in the home or the business. They are asynchronous by design, meaning your bandwidth, your connection is faster on the download than it is on the upload. All of a sudden, when you're working from home, that upload matters a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you might need to be able to send data, you're doing data back and forth. And all of a sudden, that bandwidth that maybe isn't so bad for watching Netflix because it's able to buffer. Have you ever noticed when you start something in Netflix, it might take 30 seconds for it to start, it's buffering.
Yeah.
And what that means is it's trying to get a little bit ahead of it so that when things lag, your video will continue. That's a lot more difficult to do when you're actually working. If you're saving files, if you're updating databases, if you're updating spreadsheets in accounting, that doesn't work so well. You need a decent, consistent connection to pull that off. Now, what I think might come from this, Rex and I have talked about this, is we might see both some funding even at the federal level for some of the ISPs, the internet service providers. We'll get federal funding through that USF money, which is supposed to be used for this, to get better bandwidth out in some of these more rural areas.
What you were just saying there, Rex, you were mentioning that you were having a hard time with the productivity end with your own employees. You've noticed the same thing what Tim was just talking about, correct?
Absolutely. And it's not that they're not getting work done, but it's taking 2-3 times longer than what you would expect in the actual situation.
Rex, did you also find from some of your staff that they just weren't well set up at home to work from home? Now, maybe not you so much because, as you mentioned, your staff you guys during tax time, it's very common for your team to work from home in the evenings and or weekends, especially during what's referred to as tax season for you, those of you in the accounting business. But we've seen a lot of people that they're just not set up well to work at home. They don't have a good office to go to, and especially now when the kids are at home. So because the kids are not in school. Yeah, right. Yeah. So Rex, have you found that from your staff where part of the challenge has not been just bandwidth, but has been a quiet place to be able to work and as well as childcare?
Absolutely. Most of my staff don't have a childcare challenge, but I have a couple that do. But it's been more really, as you said, Tim, a location to work and having adequate tools, i.e. multiple screens, the ability to have a desk that you can work off of, not the dining room table that you have to clear off every day, and just have their own area that they're comfortable with. We noticed I basically had some people take monitors home, take printers home, even scanners because they didn't have anything, and we hadn't actually set them up with company equipment as well. Right. As again, you and I have chatted about this, in order to be able to have the tools that they need on site. So we've kind of scrambled a little bit to make that happen as best we can. This all hit us in a time when we're extremely busy anyway.
Yeah,
sure.
So we weren't really trying to outfit everybody technology-wise. Also, we didn't really know how long this was going to go either. If this was going to be a short-term situation or not. So we just basically made do with what we had as best as we could. And so it was both a work situation, but then the other thing that you and I talked about was security. People utilizing their own home computer, so to speak. I have no control over that. We have no control over that from a technology standpoint. What is that doing from a security perspective? So those are all critical issues that from a long-term standpoint, we've got to be able to address those and better equip people from a home working environment.
Well, as they've shifted, for example, your staff, as we said earlier, were not unused to working at home. They were used to working at home, but normally it was for an hour in the evening or a couple hours on a Saturday during tax time. It wasn't an 8-hour day. They weren't trying their best to replicate their productivity in the office or come as close to it. They were just trying to wrap up a few things in the evening because it was time to go pick up the kids or get home, and after the kids are in bed or after dinner and so forth, they would hop on and work for an hour or two just to wrap up a few things. Very different than running your actual work day from home, and not everyone has a home office. And
just from the equipment that he just listed, scanners, monitors, printers, that if you're just doing some work from your laptop at home after the kids have gone to bed, that's one thing you can just head into the office the next day and get that thing printed or scanned. But if you are unable to go into the office, to manage that must be, that's just a hurdle that you don't necessarily think about beforehand when you're thinking about setting everybody up to work at home during tax season, just to kind of get you over the hump,
Rex, what kind of conversations have you had with your staff about that? What have they brought up to you that they'd like to see? Although maybe you're all just hunkering down right now, but I would imagine you've had some conversations with some of your team. Would you mind sharing some of those with us?
Sure. So a couple of conversations are, as you mentioned earlier, we work both in the cloud and off of our own office server, and we need a better streamlined process where we can access both easily, just like we can in the office. And some of that may already be available, but we just don't have everybody set up for it properly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We talked about scanners. That's an issue because even though we are in a paperless environment, we're never fully away from paper. We still need to deal with paper in some fashion. So that becomes a critical item in order to digitize things and pass data back and forth. And the multiple monitors, again, we didn't really have everybody set up for that. Right. And so they're doing the best they can. And as I said, I pushed monitors out from our office as much as we could, but it's still a challenge in order to be able to provide adequate monitor real estate in order to be able to, again, be efficient in what they're doing.
And be effective and be productive. You and I have discussed. Yeah, well, it's really extremely difficult, and we can see behind you there's a lot of paper. And one of the ways that an office becomes paperless is by scanning paper documents, and then getting them into the system so that they can then shred the paper and be done with it. But so much of what comes in, especially to an accounting firm, but many who get their shipping manifest this way, and any number of things come in as paper. And then the office might be very used to turning them into digital, but it starts as paper. So now all of a sudden they're home. They don't have the desk space like you might have at the office, where it's all laid out for you to be able to separate what has to be scanned, what has to be shredded. You have a shredding firm that comes in and takes your paper and securely shreds it, or you shred it yourself. Now everybody has a shredder at home. What's supposed to happen with those documents? They've got critical company information that shouldn't be floating around. There's a whole lot of procedural stuff that's kind of brand new, and it's just something all of us business owners and everyone who's listening who owns a business. We talked about this a few weeks back when this first got started, about how a lot of the stuff is just going to change how we work, and business owners need to start getting this up in the front of their mind, not the back of their mind. How am I going to deal with this with my team? Rex, one of the things that you and I talked about early on with this, and maybe you formulated some more thinking on this, where do you think this stands with respect to the business owner's obligation or the expectation for your staff? So when you go to hire someone, are things going to change where someone needs to be able to say, I've got a full office set up at home? Or is that the kind of thing that the business owner is going to need to provide? Is there a combination of the two there? As a business advisor yourself for all your clients, how do you see some of that shaken out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ramifications of that, from being able to hire quality people and provide them options and opportunities because of their lifestyle that they want to lead, to as I mentioned before, the security issue. And so one of the things that I think that we're going to definitely be moving to in my mind is we're going to have to come up with an at-home equipment package that we can provide for our employees so that we can control it, and that's how they access our systems, because then we have our arms completely around it and we know what's going on with it.
And that you can then take it back at the end also. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's clearly one of the things. And I don't know what's going to happen when we all start going back to work. How much social distancing are we going to have to do? I'm thinking that my staff are not going to be able to come into the office like we did. We're going to have some rotations maybe. Our office, based on our size, maybe we can only have 4 people or 5 people in the office at one time, and everyone else is going to have to be working from home. So maybe it's 1 week you're at home and 1 week you're in the office or something like that.
Right.
And so we have to be able to accommodate that better than we are now. But I think one of our first steps is going to be the at-home equipment package and what that's going to constitute and how that we're going to provide that. The other challenge that I find, though, too, is not everybody is mentally equipped to be working from home. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We're all different. We all function differently. And some people need more interaction. Some people need more direction than you can provide in an electronic environment, or we need different tools so we can help those people better. I mean, we've talked about Zoom, Tim, in the past, the virtual meetings platforms, and we need to be able to incorporate some of that as well, because I'm not staying in as close a touch with my staff as I need to, and so there's a number of issues that we're going to have to address, and I see our work environment changing dramatically because of this.
And you think that'll be ongoing?
Absolutely. I really do.
And so what's your advice also then to small business owners? They need to start thinking about this as an expense and or capital expense, as well as operational expense line item for providing this kind of equipment for staff to be able to work from home, again, depending on the staff, maybe not the warehouse staff, but certainly the office and clerical staff and so forth. Is that the kind of thing you're beginning, or you see yourself at least advising your small business owners that they should start thinking about and planning on?
I think so, and I think it's as you were saying, it's not going to be appropriate in all situations. But in those situations where it is, business owners are going to have to be proactive in those cases. So, your professionals, your office people, your insurance agents, your attorneys, your accountants, your engineers, those types of people are going to need to have that flexibility, in my mind. And the flip side of that is maybe you are able to reduce your real estate needs. Maybe you don't need as big of an office, and you can cut back on your rent costs or your utility costs associated with that to offset some of these other costs that you're having to invest in. But I also think it's even we've seen this in the past in terms of the remote workforce and the ability to obtain really quality staff because you provide them options, particularly in an area where we live in that may not necessarily be everybody's cup of tea in terms of living here. So if you can provide those options to people, I think you'll have a broader pool that you can draw from potentially as well.
Do you see that as a positive outcome of this, Rex?
Absolutely, and I can give you a real life example in our office. We have a couple of people that are approaching retirement years, and they would like to continue working, but they want to have the freedom to be able to do, once we are able to start doing this again, traveling, or maybe spending time in a different location outside of Traverse City. And so my goal is to be able to, technology-wise, provide them that option so that we can maintain those people and their years of experience and have that available to us, but also meet their needs of not wanting to work a regular, 40-hour work week maybe, or whatever the case may be. And I think we have a lot of, we're always talking about the baby boomers retiring and how many people are hitting retirement age. That ability to maintain and to utilize those people with the wealth of experience and knowledge that they have, maybe it's on a reduced basis, but to give them an option that maybe wasn't there before. I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of businesses.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And you mentioned a lot of professional type people, but even someone who's in construction or whatever that wouldn't necessarily meet the engineer, accountant, lawyer professional still has someone who handles payables, who might handle payroll, who might maybe a sales staff, who could also not necessarily need to work at the office. Mm-hmm. Do you see, Rex, where small business owners then need to start getting with people, maybe even like you, consultants, who can help them devise a policy and a strategy and a framework for doing this? Because it seems like it could also be kind of willy-nilly, and if it's willy-nilly, you're going to have, like what you mentioned earlier, which always makes me kind of write a little bit, security issues. So do you think it's a good thing for small business owners to get with their consultants like you and start devising ways to maybe how this might work and what kind of costs they should actually plan on having?
Absolutely. I think that the small businesses are getting hammered right now because of not being able to be in business, quite frankly.
Not being able to produce. Yeah.
Exactly. So they've got to come up with options and different ways of addressing this. There's going to be we're going to lose a lot of these businesses. There's going to be a lot of businesses that are not going to be opening their doors again. And the ones that survive, in my mind, are, one, they have the staying power, and two, they have the ability to be adaptable. And these are the kinds of things that they have to look at. And not all of these are going to fit in every circumstance. But where you can and where it makes sense, I think you've got to be willing to look at a lot of different options, from your staffing, from your reaching out to your customer base. Clearly we have to have online presence. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's a question of what makes the most sense in your facts and circumstances.
And also keep in mind, this is going to cost a certain amount of money, but it is money that likely would be offset, or at least portions of it would be offset.
Or so has the ability to be, Yeah,
it has the ability to be offset, and that's where someone like Rex, a accountant and business consultant. Rex does a lot of consulting for me. We don't make many business moves without running it through our accounting team.
Well, unfortunately, guys, I'm going to interject here real quickly, even though I feel like we could keep talking about the pros and the cons and all of this. I feel like the shelter in place has brought up so many more ideas and thought processes from businesses, some good and some bad. But we are going to have to close down our conversation here. Rex, is there anything else that you wanted to add about where you think your company and companies like yours are moving towards in terms of transitioning either right now or when the shelter-in-place lockdown quarantine has ended?
The only thing I'd like to add, I guess, is to encourage all business owners to embrace what's happened, not to go, woe is me in this whole situation, but really look at what are the options and the opportunities it presents and think out of the box. I hate that term a lot of times, but it really is so true. You've got to look at different options and look for how you can take advantage of what's happened here. So I just would encourage people to really embrace that.
And seek out a good consultant and counselor who can help them through it too, because there's a lot of brand new stuff here that a lot of people who own businesses and have run successful companies for a long time, man, this is just kind of out of the blue, and it's really hard to make sense of it, and especially now with everything seeming like it's kind of on hold at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, as we're kind of slowly moving towards opening up.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with me this week, guys. Have a wonderful week, and we'll catch up with both of you soon, okay?
Thank you. Thanks, Rex.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you bet.
Rex.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys.